Sit! Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Rich Dotson. He's Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
He's Garret Price.
How's it going?
Yeah, when you go in remote, you get a little bit more of delay. Look at us. Separated from a distance more than a yard.
We spent so much time.
Yeah,
we spent so much time cozy together that we decided to take a week apart.
It's been a while since we got a podcast out. It feels like, it's been over a little over a week, around 9 days since the NFL draft weekend has concluded. So we are back after our NFL draft extravaganza. Some people, their rookie drafts are already done, like a lot of mine. Some are in the middle of them, and some haven't even begun. But with rookie drafts, you also have startup drafts. And right now, a lot of leagues, they'll wait to do their startups. Some will do it beforehand where the rookies are included in the draft, whether it be picks or the rookies, or some people just want to wait and do a whole new startup. Well, here at Dynasty Nerds, we're doing startup drafts, mock drafts all the time and collecting ADP, because what is ADP? For anybody that does not know, it's average draft position. It is what's used when you hold a numerous amount of drafts, and then you just take the average of every player of where they're going. And the value of this is, some people will argue that, guys, that ADP is more valuable than rankings. Some people will argue because that gives you the census, right? That's going to give you what everybody else out in the community is thinking right now and how they value a player, where, any kind of news can drastically change a player's ADP. And it's, to us, we know it's a very valuable tool, because what you want to do is you want to combine your rankings against ADP, because that's where you're finding a real value at. Like, where do you value a player compared to the public? And it's why we were so adamant about getting ADP on our website. It's why we host mock drafts almost every other day to get a pulse on the community and where they feel, so our users can have that information on dynastynerds.com, where you can get ADP, which is updated consistently. And right now, during startup drafts, the rookies are in there. So ADP has changed drastically from just a month ago. So now that the players have been drafted, they're in the draft, they are into startup drafts, it's going to push players down, it's going to push players up overall in ADP. And we're excited about this because we're going to talk ADP in this episode and where the current status is, what the status quo is as of early May in the Dynasty community. And then on our next episode, we're actually going to break down the NFL draft rookies and how they affect everybody else around them, right? Like, so who else has been affected by these NFL rookies? So let's start off with this brand new May 2024 ADP. What do you guys think here at the top? There's two rookies that enter the first round of, Marvin Harrison just missed it. There's only one rookie that enters the top 12 of ADP, and that is Caleb Williams, who comes in with an ADP of 9.6, bumps Amon-Ra St. Brown out, the rookie. So, because Marvin Harrison Jr. comes in at 13, so that bumps Amon-Ra St. Brown out of first round ADP. Anything you guys see here outside even the rookies here in the first top 12, 14 picks here that kind of comes as a surprise to you possibly?
I mean, nothing that really sticks out too far. I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr., just to be clear, his average draft position is 13.2, but he was the 12th player in the order.
Oh, so, he is first round, yes.
Yeah, so he is right there on the first round. And he did bump Amon-Ra just right out of the first round. So, but from what I'm looking at, I feel like a lot of those picks make sense to me if I'm doing a startup draft right now. None of that sticks out and looks weird to me.
Yeah, it is the one thing that I'll say that is a bit surprising. Just in general, it's rare to have two rookies instantly enter the first round like that. Doesn't happen very often. Sometimes you'll get one, if it's a quarterback that's highly sought after. But typically, you're having their first guy go in the mid-second round. So to have two guys in the first round is pretty rare. I will say as big of a Marvin Harrison Jr. fan as I am, I would still have a hard time drafting him above Amon-Ra. I think if Marvin Harrison Jr. put up Amon-Ra St. Brown numbers, you would be thrilled. And it's not like Amon-Ra is old. So it's basically, to me, even though I know he's one of the most, or probably the least likely picks to bust out of any that we've seen in a long time, it still is harder for me to say, yeah, I'm going to take this guy in a new landing spot, new team, all of that, over a guy that's just proven it consistently year after year.
Yeah, I think you're just gambling on the reset of age and banking on the, that he's gonna have the consistability that you love long term. So what I think here is, I mean, if you can flip a coin, and I'm fine because I have I'm with you, Garrett. I have Amon-Ra St. Brown as my wide receiver 4 and Marvin Harrison right behind him. But I can flip-flop those two on any given Sunday. I think I have a question. Like, what do you guys feel like C.J. Stroud comes in as quarterback, 3 overall and a third overall player? Yeah.
Hold that. Before we get too far, just so people know what the top 12 is, do you want to just spout them off real fast just so we are sharing? Or are we going to share this list somewhere where people can look at this? Because we've had a couple comments about maybe kind of talking and not people not being able to follow along on some things. So I'll say,
if you go to YouTube, we'll make sure that this is on YouTube. You'll be able to see it. But if you're just listening in podcast form, So Patrick Mahomes, first guy off the board. Josh Allen, C.J. Stroud, Jalen Hurts. So 4 quarterbacks to start things off. Then Justin Jefferson at 5, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and then Justin Herbert are 6, 7, and 8. Then we get Jamar Chase, Caleb Williams at 10, at 11, CeeDee Lamb, and then the last one is Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, Rich.
No, you're totally fine. So C.J. Stroud, comes in, has a dynamite rookie year. He's currently going as a 3rd overall player in startups after 1 year. Are you guys comfortable there taking C.J. Stroud 3rd overall ahead of Jalen Hurts, ahead of Justin Jefferson, Burrow? I don't mind taking him ahead of Lamar Jackson, a Justin Herbert, or even a Caleb Williams.
I mean, I'm a little bit. I'm typically a little slower to move guys up. I mean, I think there are plenty of examples of guys having really good rookie seasons, and then kind of the league adjusting a little bit to them and exposing some of their weaknesses, maybe that were hidden a little bit deeper. Let's say. I mean, a perfect example is a guy like Baker Mayfield when he came out and would setting rookie records and all that kind of stuff, and then he just kind of faded and kind of had a few bad years after that. Now he's serviceable, but I think he was artificially kind of elevated by that rookie season. So I'm always a little bit leery about doing that, and I would take the more established guys, the Joe Burrows, the Justin Herberts over CJ Stroud at this point, but I get why people are doing it. I mean, he's 22 years old. He himself, was it 30? How many touchdowns did he throw last year? I mean, he did a good job. I mean, he was on fire as a rookie. So, I mean, the upside is totally there. So I get it. I'm just not one to do it myself.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you said it, 22. He's 22, coming off, as a quarterback 1, and to see him already what the Texans have already put around him and him being in that rookie contract. It is kind of weird though, like to see a quarterback of that stature who doesn't have like a huge rushing upside, like that's he doesn't have like how Justin Fields saw his meteoric rise. So that is a little. Somewhat as a hesitant, like I said, Garrett, or Matt, like you said, where leads could adjust. I would probably want to play it safer, where you have another quarterback in the same mobility, like a Jordan Love, kind of shot onto the scene his first full year started, and yeah, he got a big rise, but he's going off the board at an ADP of 16. And the differential between the upside of C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love and how young they are, like that's a move I would love if that's where the value is. Like I would love to be able to move back off at 3 and pick up an extra additional pick and just grab like a Jordan Love who I feel is proven just as much as C.J. Stroud.
I think along with that, because I like the point you made at the end there, because in a vacuum, I don't have any issue with C.J. Stroud there. And But I'm 100% with you on I would just rather move back. That's why right now in startups, if I'm not one of the first 2 picks, put me at like 11 or 12 then. Because all of these guys below CJ Stroud all have some sort of wart. You know what I mean? Jalen Hurts, okay, you lost your all-pro center that was getting you all of those rushing touchdowns on the tush push. Is there going to be a small decrease? And now you have Saquon Barkley around the goal line. Like, will you lose a little bit? Maybe. Joe Burrow has a really hard time staying healthy. He's been injured a lot over his short career. Lamar Jackson, I've never been super in on the guy, and he's also one that's very injured. Justin Herbert, nobody to throw to right now, and a different offense. Anthony Richardson, like, he's been injured. He's like, so all of these guys are players that have a wart to some extent. So I guess it just depends, like, which one do you dislike the least? Like, which wart can you tolerate the best? I guess is really where it comes down to for me. But I'm with you. At that point, like, if I'm choosing startup picks, if I'm not choosing 1 or 2, then I would much rather have 11 or 12 than be anywhere else in the draft right now.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I have no problem with CJ Stroud going there either. Like, if somebody took him, I wouldn't say anything whatsoever. I mean, there might be an instance where, like, hey, I don't have a CJ Stroud share. I'll take him here 3, because definitely in the first round, like, there's no difference, like you said, of getting your guy in the first round. Like, forget ADP. Like, all these guys that we mentioned here are worth a first round startup pick, right?
Absolutely.
All of them are. And even some guys outside of that realm, like you mentioned, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, in my opinion, Jordan Love. If you really love Bijan or Brees and want to get your guy, like, all those guys are worth first round. And in the first round of a startup, you should definitely get your guy, right? Like, this is the cornerstone of your franchise. You want to have somebody that you can root for, that you like, that they obviously that has long-term value. So any of these guys, you know, if you're an Eagles fan, you're taking Jalen Hurts, right? Like, if you're a Cowboys fan, like, you're going to lean towards trying to get a hold of CeeDee Lamb, because that's something you're going to watch every single Sunday and cheer a little extra for as it is. So I have no problem getting any of these guys in the first round, even some of these guys right outside, because if you have a guy and you can't make it, like we said, Garrett, sometimes it's so easy to say, oh, just trade back and grab some extra picks, right? Like, we see it all the time on Twitter or any message group, like, oh, dude, you should just trade back and gain some extra picks. Well, to do that, you have to have a trade partner. In some leagues and some situations, you just don't find that possible. Definitely in a startup where everybody's trying to trade back, for the most part. It's really hard to find somebody to move up in a startup. There's always 1 or 2 guys, but for the most part, everybody's trying to do exactly what you're doing. They're trying to trade back. You might have a little bit more luck in a newer league, like on an introduction to Dynasty, to do something like that, where somebody sees they have the opportunity to get CeeDee Lamb and Jamar Chase, and I think giving you like a 3rd, 4th, and 5th is no big deal, but it turns out it's devastating. So sometimes, like, you just have to take a guy because you don't want to trade back. The value's not there, right? The offers you get in aren't tickling the pickle. So what you want to do is just go ahead and get that guy, and don't worry about AD, because they're all worth that status. So let's move into the second round here of ADP and see where we're at. I'm sure we got some more rookies coming into effect here.
I mean, really, the second round doesn't have many. So, I mean, or there's none.
None. Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, 13, it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, Anthony Richardson, Bijan Robinson, Jordan Love at 16. 17 is Breece Hall, 18, Kyler Murray, 19, Garrett Wilson, 20, Trevor Lawrence, 21, A.J. Brown, 22, Jahmyr Gibbs, 23, Christian McCaffrey, and 24, Puka Nacua. So there's really nothing there that was, rookie related. I mean, I do think there might be a couple of them, particularly the Puka Nacua there at 24, that might be a little bit high for me. But that's the one that really sticks out as I mean, I like Puka Nacua, but that seems a little bit high for me. A little rich for my blood.
It's a little rich. It's not too far off in my eyes. I mean, there's just players I'd prefer, over him. Like, I would even prefer, like, a couple rookies here. Like, I would prefer Malik Neighbors over Puka Nacua for sure. There's a couple, like, again, I'm nitpicking because these guys are right behind, but I would much rather have Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, and probably Sam Laporta in a dynasty league over Puka Nacua. And I might even honestly lean, obviously it depends where your team is, but even not much so, where, like, I'd probably honestly lean Jaden Daniels over Christian McCaffrey too. Like I know he's a cheat code at running back. I know he could single-handedly walk you in the playoffs and win you a championship with a decent team around him. But to get a young 23-year-old quarterback, or is Jaden Daniels 24 already?
24. He's another
so
one,
to get a 24-year-old quarterback that offers such huge upside, like it wouldn't surprise me in the least bit if when we're talking next year's ADP, Jaden Daniels is not in the first round, right? Like he has that kind of like the Justin Fields effect, but he actually throws the ball for more yards. So outside of those guys, but I'm splitting hairs here because those guys are right behind those guys at the same time. So I'm sure there's been plenty of situations in drafts where they have gone ahead of those guys.
The one that is arguably the biggest surprise, and it shouldn't be much of a surprise because this is kind of where we always projected this player going, but the one that we saw the biggest rise was Kyler Murray pre-draft was not in the second round. He was mid to late third round, and people were pretty down on Kyler Murray. You add in Marvin Harrison Jr. though to this team, and all of a sudden now he's a mid-second round pick. So everyone else in here, this is roughly where they were pre-draft. He's the only one that is pretty different than where he was pre-draft.
And I want to go back here too and kind of mention something about what we talked about pre-draft process and the importance of drafting these quarterbacks. Definitely quarterbacks that were taken in the top 10 in NFL drafts that kind of have that draft insulation. Is that not only are these guys the rocket ship to take you where you need to get because they offer the highest points per game upside, but we mentioned how like insulated these players are as well, right? Like. You have a rookie quarterback that goes out and something happens, like their value for the most part holds. And it gives you an out where like if you're worried, you can move off. And we have a perfect example here with Anthony Richardson. He is right now player 13.8 ADP. So right at the second round, top of the second round of a startup, right behind Amon-Ra St. Brown is Anthony Richardson's going. And this is a player who got hurt really early last year, who has a history of some shoulder injuries and hasn't shown us, he came out, he looked really good at his first game. He did look really good, but such a small sample size. And even with that pretty much one game of sample size there for Anthony Richardson, he has a ridiculously high ADP. And for me, I would take Jordan Love over Anthony Richardson personally, because I feel a little bit better about his, consistability. And honestly, even like a guy like you mentioned his name, Kyler Murray. Like Kyler Murray with Marvin Harrison Jr. might be a safer bet right now than Anthony Richardson. But the point is, when you take these players like Drake May, real high in your draft, or even a guy like J.J. McCarthy, who went 10, even though it was a 6th quarterback off the board, or why it's important to take Michael Penix Jr. More importantly, right, is that investment. Every year that goes by, you could argue that Michael Penix Jr. is going to get more valuable, honestly. Definitely if Kirk Cousins goes in here and shows that these weapons they have around them, the Bijan Robinsons, Drake Londons, and Kyle Pitts, and I'm sure they're going to add another good receiver here down the road. Like how excited people are going to be for Michael Penix to join that offense before he ever, Michael Penix's value is probably we'll see his ADP go up continually, definitely as he gets closer to that 2-year window where they got from Kirk Cousins. So Anthony Richardson kind of provides us the value of those quarterbacks. It might not even be a player that you may need. It might not be a position that a player you even like. It's just that draft capital in that position at that quarterback does maintain value. And we always say, you draft that player because that is not, if it works out, it gives you a giant, not only a weapon, but if you already have 2 quarterbacks or impossible 3 quarterbacks, you still go that way because it's the most valuable trade piece you'll ever have in Superflex outside of, a Justin Jefferson, but those outlier players, these guys are much more likely to get you the biggest bang for your buck. And I think right now, a player that I really do like in Anthony Richardson tells us as clear as day with such a high ADP. Again, a little bit too rich for me, but he's still in that neighborhood. But I just want to put that point across there, the value of those young guys and how they really don't have to show you much early on for you to still maintain that value.
And Rich, conversely to that, I mean, you're talking about insulation on quarterbacks that are specifically taken high. Conversely, I mean, some of these other positions are quite a bit more risky. I mean, just because I mean, for example, Treylon Burks. I mean, that guy was a high first-round draft pick. He was going super high in ADP after he was drafted, and that guy's fallen off the cliff. I mean, they're talking about it not being insulated. It didn't take him long. People were giving him a second chance, at the beginning of the year in his second year, but that is all evaporated. He has no trade value right now at all.
And I saw something. Sorry to interrupt you. I saw something today that Treylon Burks is the first player ever in like KTC history to have like negative player value.
I mean,
oh my gosh.
That's crazy, but I mean, it is a good example for how the cliff can happen for these players pretty quickly if it's not a quarterback that's been drafted high and hasn't shown a little bit of promise.
I mean, yeah, he's dead. He's dead to the water. I mean, you don't go out and sign Calvin Ridley to a monster deal, have DeAndre Hopkins sign Tyler Boyd, and who else? They signed somebody else.
No doubt. They have what's his name, Nuke. So
I know. I mean, they also signed somebody else. Like recently, I wish I wrote it down, but they signed somebody else too. But anyways, too much to talk about a negative value player.
But to your point, the quarterbacks are more insulated than the other positions. That's why you should push them up your draft boards.
And Superflex tight end premium leagues, of course. Hey, Dynasty Nerds, it's time to take your Dynasty game to the next level with FFPC's Dynasty Startup Leagues. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just getting started, FFPC has a league for you with entry fees ranging from $100 up to $5,000. Choose from a variety of formats, including Superflex, Best Ball Superflex, Triflex, 1QB, and Standard. With weekly lineups, waivers, trades, head-to-head matchups, and playoffs, FFPC's fully managed leagues provide the ultimate dynasty experience. Most importantly, the leagues are here to stay. FFPC has never had a dynasty league fold. They manage the entire commissioner experience from buy-in management to fulfilling your orphans. FFPC is perfect place to expand your dynasty league portfolio. And here's the best part. As a Dynasty Nerds listener, you can get $25 off any entry fee as a new member when you use the promo code NERDS. Head over to myffpc.com now to draft your team, manage your roster, and dominate your league with FFPC. That's myffpc.com. Promo code NERDS for $25 off any entry fee for new members. FFPC, where dynasty dreams become a reality.
Correct.
Garrett, where are we at on this ADP?
Speaking of tight end premium, we have our first tight end off the board at pick 25 in Sam Laporta. Then two more rookies, pick 26 and 27 in Jaden Daniels and Malik Neighbors. Then we get Tyreek Hill, Chris Olave, Jonathan Taylor, who is kind of a little bit of the cliff at running back because we don't see another one for a while. Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy at pick 32. 33, we've got Jalen Waddle, 34, Tua, 35, Brandon Ayuk, and at 36, Drake London.
I don't know. Whoever did the color coding on this thing must have thought Tua was a wide receiver.
Whoopsie.
It was me.
Well, the first thing that really stands out to me here is, again, and I'm being nitpicky because they're in the same tier here, but like Jonathan Taylor going ahead of Brock Purdy and Dak Prescott, like I don't love that. We just talked about the quarterback value, but everything else is pretty chalky to me. Ayuk, for me personally, like I'd still probably rather get a couple quarterbacks. Definitely in a startup with how much more depth you have at receiver. Like you're going to take Brandon Ayuk there, and you could go get like a Drake May, like at quarterback, somebody who's super young, a Jared Goff even at quarterback, and then come back, and then even though you miss out on Ayuk, you still have a lot of value out there in guys like Michael Pittman, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Those are like the main names I see there.
DJ Moore.
DJ Moore. But for me, like I think it's one of the things, like some people in startups, they really do kind of go out there and once they grab their first quarterback, they're like, okay, I have to go out and get my positional value players. And they kind of push that second quarterback back a little bit. And I maybe like one guy, like, hey, I'm gonna get Jared Goff, and it all depends how the board goes. For me personally, and I don't know how you guys play, like I really do try to get my second quarterback within those first 4 rounds, right around there. Like I want to have 2 of those at the latest, and it's why I also lean like if I can, just get it out of the way and get a really good guy, not even to worry about it, and grab my second quarterback as early as possible, like the second round, like back-to-back jacks.
No, I'm that is me 95% of the time I'm going back to back. But if not, I'm usually 2 out of 3. I got both my quarterbacks by the end of the third round. I mean, but weird things happen. You know what I mean? There are times when that's not going to be a thing. And because not everyone can get 2 quarterbacks in the first round. I mean, technically you can, but I mean, it's just bad drafting if you're just drafting a quarterback just to draft one. So for me, I always do that way. You can get a third one somewhere in those middle rounds and feel okay about your depth overall.
And that's where you take, you always grab a third one, like the Will Levis, where the values. Okay, I'm gonna grab you want your third one to be Will Levis, not your second, and this kind of shows us right here because I'm with you. I said 1 out of 4, but I'm with you, Matt. 1 out of 3 because when you're looking here, you're looking at that back end of like potential, also like not potential, but like quarterback ones to give you the opportunity to have 2 quarterback ones, and having 2 quarterback ones is, again, it's kind of like a cheat code because you have 2 probably top 16, top 18 overall scorers in entire fantasy football here. And you're looking at Tua Tagovailoa, Brock Purdy, and Dak Prescott, both in these tiers. And a tier before that, and at the top of the third as well, Jaden Daniels, right? Like you can take the risk for a really good upside rookie in Jaden Daniels, take a proven vet in Dak, a young guy who looks like he's probably the long-term answer here. By after next year, this ADP could probably skyrocket if he goes out and has another quarterback 1 year and gets a contract extension in San Francisco. I mean, Brock Purdy here at also like 24 years old, like just almost as old as Jaden Daniels, sitting here at pick 32, right? I understand the pick, and I'm not arguing the pick, but I'm talking about where sometimes rankings and ADP, and this is you try to find value in ADP, right? Like where's the value at? And I think for me, the biggest scream here in value is a guy like Brock Purdy because he as a guy has a massive chance. Obviously, Jaden Daniels has the same boat as a rookie to jump in the first round, but Brock Purdy become a first-round ADP startup player if he goes out and has one more year. And again, they just took another receiver in the first round, Ricky Pearsall. If he has one more year as a quarterback 1 and then goes in this offseason with the rumor of him getting signed a long-term contract and he signs a 5-year, $250 million contract with a $200 million guaranteed, this is a player that will have tremendous jumps. So when I see value here, like definitely over a guy like Jonathan Taylor, right? Like a running back who's only had really 1 awesome year, maybe 2 awesome years. Jonathan Taylor, who's been hurt for the same amount at the running back position, to take him over a guy like Brock Purdy, let alone Tua and Dak Prescott. That's where I see the difference. And why I brought up Jonathan Taylor's name, because for me, I love this back end of the first round. And like Matt said, either it's the haves or the have-nots when it comes to quarterback, right? Like if you're going to settle for Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield, like you're always gonna be like, oh man, I gotta find a position to get another quarterback. Like that's always gonna be at the front of your agenda, because that's gonna be the most important thing you have to do. When you get the guys that are 2 young guys, like say you get a Brock Purdy and you get a Jordan Love, like that puts such an ease on your overall strategy in Dynasty Superflex long term, not having to worry about that position, to let it fall to you, to let trades come to you, to take values on guy like Michael Penix, where you can wait 2 years and get rewarded, take the gambles on some of these quarterbacks that get drafted in the second, third round, make trades for backups and find value there. So I just want to bring up like the biggest value I saw here and where you got those quarterbacks and how important it is in those top 36 picks.
And just to put a cherry on top of what you were just saying about, you're kind of always chasing it, right? I mean, I always feel like a little bit of desperation when I don't have 2 solid quarterbacks and almost like a third in the chamber, so to speak, as a guy that's either I can throw in a pinch, or maybe, like a Will Levis, like you said, like a developmental guy that has at least a shot to become a starter and like really grab a hold of a job. I always and desperation is a stinky cologne, and everyone in your league knows it. And they're going to take advantage of the fact that you're always out there looking, and you're either going to have to give up too much in a trade to get one, or you're just going to have to luck into it. And that's a hard thing to rely on. And people, everyone out there is trying to do the same thing as you. So no one's going to let a quarterback just fall to you. You know what I mean? Like it's going to have to be tremendous value for them to go in a different direction. And that doesn't happen all that often in Superflex.
It's the hardest position to acquire.
It really is.
And you just said, you said, won the chamber, a pinch, a stinky cologne. Sounds like Garrett after a late night Taco Bell situation.
It's not entirely inaccurate. One thing I did want to highlight about this group of players is I mentioned before how Kyler Murray moved up. We have two guys that were in this range that are no longer in this range, and we'll touch on it a little bit more in the next episode when we talk about how landing spots affected some of these players. But Devon Achane and Kyron Williams were in the third round range. They were guys that people were prioritizing, kind of getting that end of that first tier. They were kind of, or I should say second tier, those top two tiers. We had 7 guys. Now ADP wise, it's kind of become 5 guys in a tier, and they've fallen into the next tier. So we'll touch on those two a little bit more in the next episode, but just wanted to highlight some guys that moved out of this range due to the draft.
Hey guys, let me tell you about our friends at Sleeper. Guess what? Our app is the mini is live on Sleeper right now. The Dynasty GM, pretty. You can use the analyzer, you can use the trade calculator, and my favorite thing is the inbox, right? Where all your trades from all your Sleeper leagues are right there. You can actually push trades through the actual Sleeper app. And right now, we could be more excited to be partners with them. And right now, if you don't know, they are doing DFS. And I know how many people that play Dynasty play DFS as well. And right now, there's not a better place to play DFS than Sleeper. They're offering up to 100 times your entry, the highest payout in the whole DFS market right now. You can track your fantasy players and your Sleeper picks in real time. All you got to do is choose 2 to 8 of your favorite players from pregame, live in-game, or even across different sports. Pick more or less than the predicted stats, and only on Sleeper you can get up to 100 times your payout. You can share it with your friends and get rewarded together. Make sure you use that promo code NERD so our friends know that friends sent them their way. And get your deposit match and have a good time. Have all your DFS, all of your fantasy leagues, and now even a Dynasty GM in one spot. It is fully operational inside Sleeper right now. And then when you're a Nerd Herd member, you get that full access to that. And remember, you also want to download the Dynasty Nerds app because they're both in there. Check it out. Check our friend Sleeper. Check out our DFS. Use that promo code NERDS.
Get your whole estate.
And enter in that 4th round of your startup right after Drake London at 36. It comes in Devontae Smith, Drake May, Devon Achane, Kyron Williams, Rome Odunze, Travis Etienne, Michael Pittman, DJ Moore, Trey McBride, Nico Collins, Dalton Kincaid, and T. Higgins. Garrett, anything you see here that you kind of want to that's special. Let me touch it.
Yeah. So the thing that's a little bit surprising to me overall, I don't really have any big issues except for when we get to the tight end position, and maybe you guys can kind of help me understand this one a little bit. I don't want to take anything away from Trey McBride. I think Trey McBride is a very good, very talented tight end. But I don't fully understand why he's the tight end 2 right now, specifically over a Dalton Kincaid. When we just had Marvin Harrison Jr. go to the Cardinals, and who do we have in Buffalo? Keon Coleman? Nothing against Keon Coleman, but he is not anywhere close to the level of threatening wide receiver 1 overall type of potential that Marvin Harrison Jr. has. So Dalton Kincaid has the rare opportunity to be the number 1 option in his offense, like Mark Andrews, who's a few spots away, already is. So I'm just a little confused why there's such a big push to have Trey McBride so high compared to some of these other guys.
Yeah, a lot of people like Trey McBride over my husband, Dalton Kincaid, and that's okay. It's been that way for a while from when he came up, the year he came off, and how he just dominated with Kyler. But you're right. I mean, this is a team that went out and drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. Pretty high, and he's a generational wide receiver. So Trey McBride's still going to win. But listen, I still feel the same way. If you take McBride over Kincaid, I'm not going to slap you in the face and say, "How dare you insult my husband in front of me?" I wouldn't do that. Because it's respectable. I mean, it's from one hottie to another. You know what I mean? It's hey, I respect you. I respect your tight end game. What I would say, Garrett, more so is like, why are you taking, for me personally, in a tight end premium league, why are you taking Devon Achane, Kyron Williams, and Travis Etienne over these guys? Where that's running back. It's the most fluid position. And listen, I understand Devon Achane. Nobody in the Dynasty community last year was higher on Devon Achane than Rich Dotson was. Nobody. I had him the highest in my ranks consistently. From the moment I watched his tape, I said, this guy's my third overall player. Like, he's right there with or right behind Jackson Smith and Jigba right out the gates. But he's still a running back, and they just traded up in the fourth round to grab another running back as well. Kyron Williams, fantastic rookie year. 1 year, and they took a running back in the third round. Travis Etienne, a first-round running back, but, last I checked, everybody hated him in the Dynasty community. Only book was finished as running back 3. But still, he's entering, the fourth year of his contract? Is this going to be the fourth year of his contract?
Yep.
And he's a running back. I think it starts, where it starts, the FOMO, the fear of missing out here is where you start to grab these running backs. I get it. It's either for me, I have one of those top guys, those really top couple guys, or I'm just okay to mix match the position and to pass up on a premium position. Again, this is super flex tight end premium of Trey McBride, Dalton Cade. I'll throw TJ Hawkinson's name in here. Honestly, you could throw Kyle Pitts in there on a gamble. And honestly, we haven't mentioned him too, Brock Bowers' name in here as well. Sorry, if you're going to say, hey, Rich, you can have Travis Etienne or Brock Bowers and tight end premium, give me Brock Bowers 10 out of 10 times. That's how strong I feel about it. And we talked about the quarterbacks, right? If you have two, if you don't have that second quarterback, they're the haves and the have-nots. Same exact thing, and this spreads across all of Dynasty, not even tight end premium. When it comes to tight end position, it's the haves and the have-nots, right? I've literally spent 10 years of my life talking on a microphone preaching the importance of the tight end position and how much I value it. I think it's one of the very first articles I've ever written in my entire life, the value of the tight end in Dynasty Fantasy Football and how it gives you the edge over your opponent. So, to me, it's blasphemy to go, even see these guys going in the fourth round, right on there. If I go quarterback, there's a lot of times where in my Superflex drafts, the first positional player I take after my quarterbacks is my tight end. Because kind of like we were talking about before, Matt, once you get those two quarterbacks, you're it's a big exhale, right? It's a load off your shoulders. You're just wherever else has to grab those quarterbacks, the positional values are falling down. And yeah, you miss out on a couple of those elite guys, but you have the elite guys where it matters the most at quarterbacks. It's kind of the same at tight end, right? Once you get that first guy, if you get Kincaid, you get Hawkinson, you get Trey McBride, you get Sam Laporta, that's such a huge, okay, now I can dance, right? And I can dance loose. My hips are ready to shake and bake. Here we go, because everything else is kosher. Everything else is I have such a good foundation at my super flex tight end premium. So for me, even Jonathan Taylor, I love Jonathan Taylor, but you're hey, you can have one or the other in super flex. If you're going to make a trade for Dalton Kincaid in super flex right now, real value, if we really have them, you have to offer Jonathan Taylor. That's the kind of player you have to offer to get him off some people's rosters. And for me, I'd be pretty hard pressed because I have a hard rule. Sometimes I hate trading for running backs, right, in Dynasty, because it's such a negative value. It's the one position that every day that goes by they lose value. The complete opposite of insulation. It's throwing an ice cube out on a beach. It's all right, I won't see you later. So for me, that's my biggest outlier here is the tight ends, and I would like to move some of those guys up.
See you when it rains.
Have to see. Yeah. See you when it snows, Buster. Baby, come back. What? Are you guys what do you guys think about that ridiculous rant I just went on about my favorite position in football?
Same thing. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of parallels between the tight end position and the quarterback position, just because both of them, it's scarcity, right? There's only so many quarterbacks to go around because now you're starting two of them. And same thing with the tight end position, just because there's not a lot of them that have value or a lot of consistent value within offense. So it's all about targets at the tight end position. The guys that get them are super valuable, and the guys that are spotty are a dime a dozen. and that's just how that position kind of falls out in the NFL. I do think, the talent is starting to trickle into the NFL a little bit more. I think it's coming from the lower levels, coming from the high school levels, the college levels, and everything.
We've been saying
everyone's
that for a while.
kind of starting to figure that out. So it does seem like there are going to be more of them coming each year.
Remember Kyle
where
Pitts?
In the past it was kind of. Yeah, but in the past it was kind of like every 3 years there was a guy.
Yeah.
And now it seems like almost every year there's a guy. You know what I mean?
Couple guys.
So, yeah.
I mean, Iowa has a graduating class every year.
Eric All, what up, boy? But I mean, back to Garrett's original point about Trey McBride being above Dalton Kincaid. I think that's lunacy. Lunacy.
All words are acceptable on this show.
Luda.
Yeah, Rich has made it a habit just to make up words, so I'm just going to say lunacy. Just for all the reasons that you already said. I mean, obviously Dalton Kincaid, he could end up being the number one option in this offense, and that's just not really a path for Trey McBride anymore. Last year he was at some point basically the only option. That's why he balled out and performed. That's not the case this year. I mean, he's got almost, the quote unquote generational talent coming in at wide receiver, who's I don't think is going to take very long to establish himself as the best weapon in that offense. So I think just for that simple reason, since the first day of camp, I'm sure whenever he sets foot on there with the rest of the guys, he'll be the best person out there. So Trey McBride, I think right now is being overvalued, but as the hype season kind of gains steam, I think for through all the camps and all that stuff, I would expect him to kind of trickle his way back down a few spots in the ADP anyway.
Trickle.
All right, next we've got in round 5. Round 5, we got Saquon Barkley, TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, Tank Dell at pick 52, 53 Kenneth Walker, Jackson Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf, another rookie off the board at pick 56 in Brock Bowers, Jared Goff, so the first quarterback we've seen in quite some time. Then we have Kyle Pitts at 58, Zay Flowers at 59, and rookie quarterback J.J. McCarthy at pick 60. So for you guys, this is where things start getting a little bit interesting. We're starting to tear down at some positions, but tight end's still holding pretty strong. So what do you guys think about this range here?
Yeah, I still love the value of the. Go ahead, Matt. After this, I still love the value of the premium positions. So.
Go ahead after this.
After these messages, Matt will be right back.
I mean, obviously, for me, Tank Dell is the one that sticks out kind of like a sore thumb. I mean, him going above a guy like Jackson Smith and Jigba, even Zay Flowers and Rashee Rice, those all seem a little bit high. Or for him to go above them seems like those are all guys I would take ahead of him.
Did he just get shot?
Even George. Yeah, he sure did. Even George Pickens. I mean, George Pickens, who's in the next round, we haven't gotten him yet. I would take all those guys above Tank Dell.
I don't know.
So that one,
he was a wide receiver 1 when he was healthy last year.
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, Zay Flowers never saw that. Jack, I don't know. I don't think this is far off from where it should be personally.
I don't think it's
and
far
Rashee
off either.
Rice
I just
got
don't know how you
trouble
take him ahead
again.
of those other guys.
I mean, he broke his leg
him
on a blocking. I mean, I don't know. I mean, are they going to use him like that? No, but I think it shows his fragility.
Yeah, they got shot.
If you want to use him as a fullback, yeah, he's pretty fragile. But hopefully they don't use him as a fullback anymore.
Yeah, I remember. Remember, C.J. Stroud picked him as one of the top 5 NFL receivers over Nico Collins as well. He didn't mention Nico Collins, so they have a good rapport there. Listen. I don't think it's I would take Tank Dell over DK Metcalf. I would take Jackson Smith, Jigba over Tank Dell. But you're splitting hairs. And when it comes to Zay Flowers, listen, I love Zay Flowers' tape. I loved him, but until Lamar Jackson, who's been in the league for a while now, proves that he can have a wide receiver, a high-end wide receiver, I'm not drinking that Kool-Aid anymore. That's literally everybody drinking the Kool-Aid and then just dying right in front of you, and you're like 107th in line, and you're not even in a cult. Like, you just got invited over for a sleepover, and you're like, oh, these people are drinking Kool-Aid. This is cool. And then a glass gets to you. Like, you just saw 106 people die. Like, you're gonna keep drinking that Kool-Aid? Like, and I like Zay Flowers.
Right. Well,
if I ain't drinking that Kool-Aid, give me Tank Dell.
How about this? How about this iced tea down here that I call Rasheed Rice?
You take a sip first. I don't know. This guy's out
That's
here.
the next round. That's the next round.
And that guy thinks he's out here like he's trying out
Right,
for the
it is
NASCAR. He's got another allegation out for him. Like, it's like, listen, man, like, I liked you a lot going into this, but then they just went up and traded up for Xavier Worthy, so you're no longer the number one. Travis Kelce just signed a contract extension, so honestly, bro, you're not even 1B. And then you got like George Pickens, who's been shoved to the forefront for the Steelers to be the wide receiver one. They're not there drafting receivers high in the first round. You still got Debo. He's still in San Fran. You still have other receivers down here like Jaden Reed, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans. Those guys are older, but risky business. I'm going back to like Brock Bowers and Jared Goff. Like, Brock Bowers should be way higher than Tank Dell.
I was going to get to him, but I started with the Tank Dell stuff.
Over Nico,
it's gone off the rails.
Yeah, even higher guys like Nico Collins or like Brock Bowers. Like, listen, I'm a big Nico guy. I like him a lot, but give me Brock Bowers.
Let me ask you this. Mark Andrews or Brock Bowers?
Brock Bowers.
For me, it's Brock Bowers, and it's not even. I'm not even going to hesitate. It's not even.
Yeah, I'm gonna get 45 years younger. Whew, that's young. That's like Benjamin Button stuff, baby.
Garrett,
for me,
you did. Yeah,
it's triple B's.
For me, it's Kyle Pitts. Give me the last guy in the tier, and he's the 8th tight end, 7th of the guys that aren't rookies, and then behind Brock Bowers as well. But as a prospect, he's the best of all of these guys. And we're hyping up Kincaid and McBride on potential upside, which rightfully so. They could be studs. But why can't
I've seen it?
Let's not forget what happened to TJ Hawkinson. I mean, TJ Hawkinson was a very meh tight end that was tight end 9, tight end 10, like in Detroit. Then he got Kirk Cousins, and despite being there with a really good receiver in Justin Jefferson, he was the tight end 1. Like, he was a stud. So I don't see why Kyle Pitts can't do that. So for me, if I think that I can wait around on tight end and get Kyle Pitts, I would rather save the round and get Kyle Pitts.
Oh, I wouldn't save it. I'm doubling down, baby. I love to do that too. We're like, hey, I just said Dalton Kincaid, and like, if Kyle Pitts is there when it comes all the way back to me, I'm like, well,
why not both?
Looks like I got 2. Because listen, most of those
looks like I got 2 quarterbacks and 2 tight ends.
Yeah, dude. Like, it was a flex position, trade value. Like, come on. Like, definitely in tight end premium. If you have a premium tight end, talking about like the ultimate trade chip, right? Like I'm in a lot of leagues where I have Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid like together. Like, it's a duo. And like, people are just always knocking on the door for one, because like, once they see that you have that big shiny piece of gold and they're sitting there with a piece of coal and no lighter to keep them warm, like, they are willing to come negotiate, right? Like, they want a piece of that action. Like, they want to invite you to the party. And to me, doubling down on those guys that get those, like, not only do I have an excellent player to put into my flex spot, right, to give me true value to my team, but it also gives me the ultimate play-in card in trade, right? Like, if you want to get a quarterback, a lot of times it's hard, definitely in Superflex, because you're giving up too much value in unless you draft amazingly, right? Like, and you give up a lot of value on your team, so you're kind of taking a step backwards or having making an even step when it comes to total team points. Where if you have that tight end and you're trying to get a quarterback, like, hey man, I want to get I want Jaden Daniels, and like, somebody doesn't have a good tight end. Hey, I'll give you Jared Goff and Dalton Kincaid for like Jaden Daniels, or use it for Kyler Murray. Like, you use everyone for example. Like, that really good tight end really tips the scales when it comes to making a trade. And usually it's really good value in your rookie draft. I mean, look at what even right now, like when you have really good receivers and quarterbacks, Brock Bowers is arguably the first, or if not the first, the second best tight end that we've ever scouted. And he's going anywhere from pick 6 to pick 8 in a rookie draft. And if you get him there, like, he's the player that would kind of like, if he pans out to like what he is, like a Sam Laporta, for example, because that's the best player to use because he just finished as tight end 1. Like, what a scale tipper those players end up being. Like you're using a guy like Sam Laporta as a throw-in, which is essentially end up being like 1.6, 1.7, 1.8 in a rookie draft. They use that tipping point to go grab like an elite quarterback.
So real quick, I want to interject because I feel like we missed something pretty big that we should touch on, and it kind of snuck up on me. And granted, I'm a big fan of one player over the other, but like it's a coin flip for me. Like they're very close. But have we noticed that Drake May, his ADP is pick 38, JJ McCarthy's is pick 60. Like, how is there that big of a gap between those two? Like, I don't know why that's the case, because typically I feel like they would go pretty close together. Like sometimes one over the other, sometimes the other one over that one. But like, I would assume they would be within 5 picks of each other. So even for somebody that would normally take, like in my rookie drafts, I'm taking May ahead of JJ McCarthy. This feels like a slam dunk value on JJ McCarthy.
Hell yeah. Like everybody we just argued about before for all these other guys, like JJ McCarthy's in that same argument. Like go to Tank Dell. Like even look, like say Tank Dell is going to be like a good receiver. Like, hey, this is like a really good word. Like JJ McCarthy's still the answer. A 21-year-old rookie quarterback throwing to 3 studs. Like he's the like go all the way back to like Travis when I said Devon Achane, Kyron Williams, and Travis Etienne. Running backs over JJ McCarthy. Like.
Right,
no.
and I have no issue with Drake May's ADP. It's just JJ should be up there with him.
I agree. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing about the running backs, Rich. And I was just going up the list, and I'm looking at them like I would take him over T. Higgins. Dalton Kincaid is questionable, but Nico Collins, I would definitely take him over Nico Collins. I mean, you just go right up the list, and DJ Moore, Michael Pittman, and then it gets to all the running backs you just mentioned, and he should be above all those guys. It does seem like an odd value slide, and again, this might just be too fresh, and people maybe they see him, what was he taking, 11th or whatever? I mean, like
10th.
He was
they trade up one spot to 10. He's a top 10 NFL draft pick.
Right, my bad, 10. But there was guys that went ahead of him. He was the 5th guy off the board or whatever. So
he was their pick all along. They were narrowed in on it. He was the guy, but they did offer 3 first-round picks to the Patriots for their pick.
For Drake May.
They wanted to come up to 3 supposedly to get him. So
yes,
I mean, it shouldn't be a slight that he was the 5th guy taken. He was the 10th overall player.
Yeah, and great landing spot. Listen, we preach on how good of JJ McCarthy and the land spot he is and his value overall. We're taking him ahead of guys like Brock Bowers and Rome Odunze here in a startup draft. So that speaks enough. And those guys like a Rome Odunze, like these guys' value are already higher than that. You know what I mean? It's like, and that's what it's always different too. Like a rookie draft compared to a startup draft is always different. Like even rankings may sway a little bit compared to a startup draft because when you throw everybody in the mix, it really does kind of like, oh, well, a lot of people have the same strategy as like Matt and I, for example. Like, hey, I got my 2 quarterbacks. I got my 10. Like, okay, I can wait. And then now this is somebody else's like second quarterback. Like, oh, it's JJ McCarthy, which I'd be okay with, but it's a huge risk. Like you don't want to end up with Kenny Pickett, right? So,
well, this is the kind of guy that like, I'm talking about value guys as your 3rd guy. Who knows? I mean, 60 is what round? It's the 5th round. You could be looking at that as a value in the 5th round, the last pick in the 5th round. You know what? I'm going to take my 3rd quarterback here. He's developmental, young guy. He was top 10 pick. I'm going to take him.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. That's an excellent. Yeah, because that's the value that I would see here. Like seeing 2 guys on the board here, like JJ McCarthy and even like a Deshaun Watson, but like going back to like JJ McCarthy in particular, like to get the option to get a 21-year-old quarterback that just went top 10 in the NFL draft in the 5th round. So if you went quarterback, tight end. And then say you're not a madman like me and go tight end again, but like say you grabbed a receiver there. Say you went quarterback. Say you went Jordan Love, Kyler Murray, Dalton Kincaid, DJ Moore, and now you're sitting here in the 5th round and JJ McCarthy's there. I'm like, yeah, give me a piece of that because listen, And there's so much running back value down the road, too. Definitely the guys like the Joe Mixons, right? Like these 1 to 2 year windows, which all guys are, and we know next year's draft class is. Like, that's why you push running back because, like, you can grab a couple guys that might only give you a couple years, that guys that are just okay guys, right? Like down the road. And you're getting a guy who's a 21-year-old quarterback that could, again, totally outproduce his ADP down the road here. And what's nice about getting him here, if he misses, yeah, you just missed out at, like, you could have had like a George Pickens, you could have had a Zay Flowers, but like at least you still have your quarterbacks too. Like he's not your number 2 where, like, if you miss, like, all right, you're probably already picking pretty high in your rookie draft anyways, but now you're just taking another shot in the dark at another quarterback, where if he's your 3rd, you can kind of have that little window of tolerance to, like, okay, and remember, it's insulated. It's an insulated value too to help you next year in a draft as well.
So as opposed to just going round by round, because we are running out of time a little bit, let's go through the rest of the top 15 rookies that we have and just some guys around them, and tell me if either A, you would rather, like, you like that spot, that's a good spot for him, or if there's some guys in front of him, behind him, that you think are a little odd. So the next rookie off the board, the 9th guy at pick 70 overall, is Brian Thomas. Right in front of him, we've got James Cook, Travis Kelce, Bryce Young. Right behind him, Rashad White, Isaiah Pacheco, Jordan Addison. That about the right range for you on Brian Thomas?
No, because there's Lad McConkey hasn't gone yet. Jonathan Brooks hasn't gone yet. Xavier Worthy hasn't gone yet. So for me, no, that's not about the right range. Like, if you want to take him here, listen, he's a young receiver, but like those are all 3 players I just mentioned: Jonathan Brooks, Xavier Worthy, and Lad McConkey. Like, that's like, this is way too late in their ADP. I mean, way too late. Like, for you to take guys like, yeah, Isaiah Pacheco ahead of them, you know, like Rashad White is going ahead of those guys. Like, get out of here. Like, you're taking Rashad White and Isaiah Pacheco over Jonathan Brooks. Like, forget Xavier Worthy and Lad McConkey over Jonathan Brooks. Like, what are you doing here? Like, what? Like, I don't understand that concept whatsoever. Come to ADP, and then those 2 receivers. You know, I know Lad McConkey doesn't have 1st round draft pedigree, but he's got number 2 overall to a team that traded up, who is my 4th wide receiver on tape. To the number 1 target on a team that needs a number 1 target. Like, that's lunacy. And same for Xavier Worthy, a team that, yeah, Rashee Rice had a really nice year last year. He did, and his ADP has jumped a lot. But, like, I don't view Rashee Rice when I watch him play as like a true number 1. This is a receiver that the Chiefs traded up for in the 1st round. They traded up 4 spots to go get their guy on an offense that is perfect for him in every which way. So not like throw Brian Thomas's name out of it, but you can even talk about those guys ahead of guys like Stephon Diggs, Deebo Samuel, George Pickens. All those running backs we mentioned earlier, like Travis Etienne. Like, listen, I know Travis Etienne is a running back 1, and he had a really good year, but like, man, that position, like the positional value is always going to kind of seem like, I just want to push it back, right? Like, I just want to push those guys back because I want to get the young guys where it matters most.
It is a little bit odd in the sense that typically this time of year we see rookie fever, where we, you know, and we've done ADP shows before where, like, this rookie's going too high, this rookie's going too, like, I feel like it's the opposite this year, where we've, like, overcorrected and we're not taking enough chances on some of these guys because, yeah, all of these rookies at this point just seem like they're going way too low to me.
Yeah, I mean, dude,
I'm trying to find Xavier Liggett, and he's so far down.
He's behind Troy Franklin. He's behind Troy Franklin.
Yeah, I know.
Lunacy.
What are we doing here?
Yeah,
a 4th round receiver is going ahead of a 1st round receiver. Remove the names. I don't care what their names are. There should never be a scenario where a day 3 receiver gets taken ahead of a 1st round receiver. Never, not one time, ever. Don't do it.
I mean, Derrick Henry going ahead of Lad McConkey, Derrick Henry going ahead of Trey Benson, which, okay, I'll even live with Trey Benson. If you want to go that way, you just want Derrick Henry, whatever. I wouldn't either, but I'm not going to sit here and, like, pull it out. But so Lad McConkey, you're going to take Derrick Henry over Michael Penix? You're going to take Derrick Henry over Bo Nix? Like, what? Like,
you're playing Superflex wrong at that point. If that's your choice in a startup draft, you can't go with a 30-year-old guy that's on his last legs before you take a shot at a first-round quarterback.
Give me Will Levis over Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Like, give me Will Levis. He's not even on this list yet. We haven't seen his name yet. He's a starting quarterback right now that just added 46 receivers to their roster. All veterans, by the way. So, for me, I don't like doing these kind of shows because all this wants me to do, all this makes me want to do is go join a startup.
You want to do a startup.
I just want to be like, gobble up all this positional value. It happens every year because I see it all the time. I'm like, oh, wow, this player's going what? Like, I need to get it because I want that player. Like, I'll do a startup just because I want one player at positional value. Like, you're telling me, I get Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. in, the 8th and 9th round of my startup? Like, that changes my whole strategy. So I come out of this draft essentially with Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, J.J. McCarthy,
easily.
Michael
You're getting
Penix,
them
and
10th
Bo
and
Nix.
11th.
So those are 1, 2, 3, 5. Dalton Kincaid 6, DJ Moore 7, and then I could grab Xavier Worthy and Ladd McConkey as well.
I mean,
get Ricky Pearsall and Xavier Legette in the 11th and 12th round. And
then I'll draft a running back.
The thing is, without us in these drafts pushing up all this value, there weren't the proper runs getting, you know what I mean? Like, if we were in a draft, like a real draft, people would see that we're making moves for quarterbacks and then they would start taking quarterbacks. So, I mean, it's not like, you know what I mean? Like, we're making things that we would hope would happen based off of ADP.
Sure.
In reality, when you're actually drafting, you see runs, you see trends. So, you're not going to be able to draft 18 quarterbacks, even though it says that you'd be able to.
And I'm going down here, and I'm looking at this. Xavier Legette right now, ADP 140.33. Tremendous value.
Ricky Pearsall right after him.
Yeah, Luke Musgrave, ADP of 143, screams really good value in tight end premium league. Ricky Pearsall, a first-round pick to one of the most generational greatest offensive minds in the NFL, and he has an ADP of 143.5. Ricky Pearsall, which is, again, that blows my mind. That's where I'm kind of as I dig down here and see this. I think Roman Wilson at 164 for upside is pretty good value down there. Marvin Mims going at 163.33 screams value. We talked about waiting on running backs down the road. Right now, Zach Moss, an ADP value of 166. That's the kind of player I'd love to grab as my running back 2, my running back 3 by waiting the draft to rounds 14, 15 right there. I'm going to start a young running back in what should be an explosive offense who, again, invested a first-round pick in an offensive lineman. I like Malachi Corley, a little bit of slate. This is just me kind of scrolling through here, looking at positional ADP.
Well, while you're looking through that, Rich, this is a great reminder that there are people, whether it's intentional or unintentional, that will become slaves to ADP. And the reason I say intentional or unintentional, there are some people that don't even really think about it, but they just look, who are the next 5 or 6 players available on Sleeper? That's all the further they go. It's just, who's the next 5 or 6 guys on Sleeper? Which one of those 5 or 6 do I like the most? That's who I'm going to click. That's who I'm going to take. That's why it's so important to have your own rankings that you trust. Your own, whether it's from us, whether it's your own you make, whatever it is, be prepared. Don't just trust whatever the system, whether it's Sleeper or MFL or Flea Flicker or ESPN, whatever it is, don't just trust their ADP and say, I'm going to take one of the 5 or 6 best players available and just keep moving, because there's so much good value. There's so many good players later on in draft boards. So don't be a slave to that.
And to your point, man, we've all done it before. We've all been out of our house, away from our stuff, and been drafting, and we've done that. We have me, you,
yes,
me, Rich,
yes.
Garrett. We have lists. We have rankings of our own, and we just, you're pressed for time, and you just look at the next, and you miss out on value that way. I've done it
all the
in
time.
Several startup drafts. Yeah, it's just what the heck was I thinking here? Why didn't I even?
That player goes a couple picks later, and oh shit, I didn't even think about him, because like Garrett said, you're only looking at the next 10 to 15 players that are available at AP, and I would say, Garrett, that's a really good point, because I would guess over, if I had to get, I'd put the number at over 65%. of people like, would you take the over under that use just that exact strategy during startup? They're just looking at like the next 10 to 15 players that are even scrolling through ADP of Twitter, because that's like the round range, right? Like, so and they just go by that, like, oh, that's what it is. That's the ADP. It's going to go by. Everybody's going to go by that. But then when you have your own rankings, your own ADP, that's where you take a player and people are like, oh, I forgot all about that player. Like guys, like right now, like you put a tweet out my number one owned player right now, like I have two really high owned players in all my rookie drafts. One is Jermaine Burton, but the next guy who I have in probably 90% of my rookie drafts so far, Tyrone Tracy. I'm getting in the fourth round of all my rookie drafts. And for the most part, like you said, an ADP value, like for sleeper wise, it's like $9.99, right? Like he's always at the bottom, like down there. I think a lot of people forget about Louis Reese, Zipmet, whatever. I can't remember his name completely right now, but the Chiefs, the rugby player by the Chiefs, like they signed him. Again, running back, upside player. But again, he's buried at the bottom of ADP. So like I got a lot of those shares as well because people aren't scrolling down to the very bottom of ADP. So that's why it is important that you do have your own rankings, have your own ADP, have the guys that you kind of want to target. It doesn't help as well, like to take ADP and kind of like write down like a team, like in your rank set. Like, so if you have your own personal rank set, like right there, but like kind of like circle some guys that you really like to kind of target to build, like kind of build out a team on paper. Like, okay, if this whole draft went perfect for me, like in my own rank set for value, like my team would kind of look like this. And then kind of compare it to ADP as well to kind of see like, oh, okay, well, I could for sure get this guy because he's going 2 rounds later than I would take him. So maybe I could bump him down. And now I'm getting 2 guys on my own personal rank set to fill out that spot because you actually took the time to look at the ADP. Because sometimes, even if you have, we mentioned earlier, like the first round, it's no big deal, right? Like, hey, man, like get your guy. They're all in the same value. But if you're going to go into a draft and if you reach on a guy and you draft him like 2 rounds earlier than you could have got him, like I'm all about like, hey, jump around. Like if there's a guy you really like and you're nervous about it and there's somebody out there else smell like him, jump a whole round of ADP. But like, I don't like trying to like, if I know ADP is pretty solid and we have pretty solid ADP, there's other resources out there that have pretty solid ADP too. Like I will like push it, right? Like, okay, I'm going to wait. I'll jump around, but I'm not jumping 2 rounds, right? Like, cause I'm trying to grab value. And that's what a rookie startup is. That's what, not a rookie startup, but a startup is, right? Like once you get past those first couple of rounds, like you're chasing value, right? Like, oh, this is good value here. And what do we scream about this? Like, tight ends and quarterbacks are values for the most part in Superflex startup drafts. Like that's where the value is. And remember, you got to build a team for sure too. So you're not saying, hey, take 8 quarterbacks, but like you also just want to pass up value because you're trying to fill out a roster, right? And you'll see that too. That's where this ADP gets formed. Like people like, hey, I need a running back. Derrick Henry's there, but then J.J. McCarthy's on the board. Like you're not taking the value. You're trying to put a lineup together, and this isn't redraft. This is dynasty, right? Like this has long-term implications on where you are going to finish. And passing up tremendous value is a good way to set your team back right out the gates, right? Like right out of gates. And it's why a lot of people want, like, Dynasty so addictive because so many people, like Matt mentioned before, like fall in that loop trap of like, oh, we do it. Like we don't have our rankings in front of us and you just grab a player in the ADP and you're like, oh. And sometimes it's just that one pick, right? It's that one pick that could be franchise altering. Like get a guy like Puka Nacua, right? That's a franchise altering pick. So like one of those picks, like missing out on one of those guys, like taking a J.J. McCarthy or Derrick Henry over J.J. McCarthy could drastically differentiate where your team goes. And when we join other dynasty leagues, like, oh, I learned from my mistakes, right? Like I'm going to do this again the right way, which we never do. We just constantly just stumble over our own feet. So having an ADP there and planning ahead and making sure you are doing this and not using just like random ADP on sleeper will put you in the best position to draft long term. And sometimes, like we said, it may be the rookies where we're finding right now screams pretty good value in these drafts. Or it's vets because everybody else has rookie fever at the same time. Like guys like, Amari Cooper gets pushed down drastically because somebody else wants to take Adonai Mitchell. And if that's your case, but like, wow, that's really good value right here. I'm getting a low end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 over a guy who's maybe the number 2 option in the Colts offense. We don't know. So I think ADP is very important. I'm so glad we have it on dynastynerds.com. It's on the app as well. So if you click on the player cards, we are going to track ADP on the player cards historically. We'll follow the graph of ADP and kind of follow their value along the road as it goes. And remember, ADP is not just valuable in startup drafts. It is valuable every week of the year in Dynasty, because when you're sitting here and you're seeing guys like Matt mentioned a couple guys that he thought like, oh, like Puka Nacua, that's a little bit too much rich for my blood. But if you're not like on Twitter or you're not like really into the weeds on articles, you could just see that alone and say, wow, people are valuing Puka Nacua at like 14. I have Puka Nacua. You mean I can get like this player and that probably on top? Cool. Like that helps you make trades. Like ADP is such a great trade awareness tool, whether it means to sell a player or buy a player for an opposite, where we see a guy like that slips way down the board here. And you see a guy, I'm going to use it for example, like K-Don going 186. You're like, man, K-Don, Baker Mayfield's coming back there. They had a pretty good rapport last year. I really need a number 2 tight end. Like I could at 186, and guys like Jaleel McLaughlin or Tank Bigsby's going ahead of him. Like, oh, I have Tank Bigsby, or like, shoot, I have Ty Chandler. Like I can trade you Ty Chandler for K-Don. Wouldn't even like in your head, you might say, oh, that guy will never even accept that. It's not even worth me sending the offer because it's such a dumb deal. But then ADP goes, oh, maybe it's not so dumb after all.
And adios.